Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Podcast of Jesus podcast, where we explore the radical love and justice of Christ and how it intersects with the way we live, lead, and build community today. I'm your co host, Reverend LaKesha Womack, and each week we tackle challenging questions about faith, power, and public life. Today, we're exploring a topic that is both urgent and long overdue: Black women's fight for justice in the church and the body politic. These are women who have carried the weight of transformation with courage, wisdom, and faith, and often in spaces that we have failed to be fully seen and honored. And to help us unpack this critical conversation, I'm joined by my co-host, the scholar, the preacher, the cultural critic, Dr. Obery Hendricks. Welcome, co-host.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. And our special guest, we're very special guest, and my friend tonight is Reverend Dr. Renita J. Weems. Welcome, my sister. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. It's a delight to be here.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
Dr. Weems is, Dr. Weems is an eminent figure in theological studies. I mean, she's has a few milestones to her credit. One is that, um, uh, as far as we know, she is the first African American woman to earn a PhD in Hebrew Bible in the United
Wow.
States.
Wow.
That's major. As a New Testament scholar,
Yeah.
who only had to learn, two ancient languages, I know what it's like to to be a Hebrew Bible scholar. But
Yeah.
also, she she wrote a book that was a seminal book and was very empowering for so many black women and inspiring to so many of us in theological studies. Just a sister away,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
really brought her to the attention
Yeah.
of the church, the academy, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this the secular
Yeah.
components of the nation too. And so we're
Mm-hmm.
so glad to be with her. She has
Thank you.
evolved into an eminent womanist scholar, a senior scholar that has looked up to. And thank you so much for being with us here
Thank you.
today, my sister.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Yes, so you are the first African American woman to earn a PhD in a Hebrew Bible in the United
Mm-hmm.
States. Well, tell us a little about what that was like, what that trip was like to gain that, because that must have been sort of rocky, I would think.
Yeah, it was sort of rocky. That's a good way to put it. I can say at least back then. I don't know about now, but I can certainly say back then. I don't think anybody wakes up and says, "I think I want to be the first." Maybe athletes, because they've got some milestones but I don't think in the world of scholarship at that time, for me anyway, in the world in which I operated, was I didn't wake up. I mean, people say you were Renita, you're the first. And I'm like, I didn't mean to be the first. I just meant, I think I like to get a PhD in Old Testament / Hebrew Bible. And I don't think, and I'm very sure I did not look around the country and ask, I wonder if any other Black woman has done it. That's not what many of us did who are trailblazers. We didn't ask, oh, would I be the first? So you just, one day you look up and people tell you that you are the first, but you didn't set out for yourself to be the first. You set out for yourself to find work that was fit for your soul. And so it was for me, it was the Hebrew Bible. Now, but I have written an essay of late with the last couple of years ago, where I wrote about that I'm the first one to have completed the PhD program in the Old Testament. Katie Cannon really was in 1974 enrolled at Union Seminary there in New York after having graduated from ITC in Atlanta. She went up to Union in 74, admitted into the Old Testament department there at the Union.
Yeah,
And
that's
there
right.
was a lot of you talking about harrowing stories of racism and sexism and classism that she encountered. She got booted out of the program. And it was the ethics department. It was Beverly Harrison, the professor there, who said, "Come on over into ethics." And what you could do in Hebrew Bible, my colleagues, my male colleagues, wouldn't allow you to do. I will make a place for you here in the ethics department of Union. That's so I don't always tell the story, but I appreciate your asking me because I get to say that I finished, but Katie started in
Right.
74, and I would start 10 years later in my
Mm,
program, really not knowing that Katie, I knew of Katie, but I did not know Katie had entered a PhD program in Hebrew Bible. And so there, 10 years later, 14 miles over in Jersey, there I am at Princeton Seminary, having finished an MDiv. And as an ordained African Methodist Episcopal minister, I knew there, even as progressive compared to other places, as the first district of that, New England, mid-Atlantic area was, I knew that in 1980, in the 80s, I was not going to get a church that could financially sustain me.
mhm,
And a professor, a graduate student, in fact, a TA, that's what I'm really, a TA one day wrote on a paper of mine, a MDiv paper of mine, in red, that says, "Have you ever considered, would you consider a PhD program you should consider," that's right. It was on the prophets. It was a paper on Jeremiah and the prophets. And she just put casually, I think I must have made an A or something like that. And she said, "Have you thought about, or you should consider getting a PhD or becoming a graduate student or a doctoral student or something like that." And that changed the trajectory of my life.
mm,
So, and it was just a casual comment of a TA. And I set my face toward Jerusalem, if you will, and began that arduous journey. So I was already an MDiv student at Princeton, so I applied to the PhD program at Princeton and was accepted. And from all intents and purposes, can I just say, I think at least I was treated. I was treated, of the 5 students who were enrolled in that cohort, I was treated as though I was the least qualified.
mhm. Yeah.
I was ignored. I was, for intents and purposes, I was ignored. I was tolerated. And no one, let's say it like this, as I say this to students now, no one rises to low expectations.
Mhm,
And
Right.
but there was definitely low expectations of me.
mhm,
And so I suffered through a lot of that, embarrassment, imposter syndrome,
mhm,
feeling unqualified, feeling inarticulate, unable to speak up in the seminar like others, had no idea of the kind of references that people were referring to. I had not read Dickinson, I had not read German scholars, I had not read whatever you name. So I missed all the jokes, all the inside comments, because that was not my infrastructure.
mhm.
But as,
No.
as fate would have it, I would go on and graduate. And really, can I just say, I don't know where the other 4 are. I have no idea. I never heard of them again.
Yeah.
So the very one that they were, had questions about admitting, and there was a cloud over my admission. I ended up being the one who came out, doing pretty well in the
The
field.
anointed,
But
the anointed
yeah,
one.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. As you know, I graduated from Princeton Seminary as well with MDiv, but it was also a professor, Clarice Martin, was a
yeah.
young
That's
black
what I wanted to say. Thank you.
who talked me into doing a PhD in New Testament, and you know,
Yeah,
and like you. But see, that speaks to what we're used. I never imagined being able to do a PhD. She had to make me apply actually to Princeton University. So we had
yeah.
similar journey,
Yeah,
except
and
I didn't.
give me the opportunity to say that, just precisely, that Clarice Martin was the first Black woman to get her PhD in New Testament, and that was
She.
about 4 or 5 years before me. I mean, I
Wow.
received my PhD in '89. I believe I call her Clarice, but Dr. Martin received hers in about '84, '85 from
Mhm.
Duke. So she's, if we want to talk about who's the first to receive a PhD in biblical studies, period, would be Clarice Martin and then Renita Weems in Hebrew Bible. And I had, and like you, I think, and I want to say this, I mean, because these are the platforms in which we get to set the historical record straight.
Yes.
I had the great pleasure of being a PhD student in Hebrew Bible at the time that Clarice Martin was a junior faculty. She came on a junior faculty. I was past my exams, so I didn't take a course with her. But I got to meet this Black woman who has a PhD in New Testament, and I am there during the time that Prathia Hall went.
Mhm. Yes,
Prathia
yes.
Hall is a PhD student in ethics. So everybody talks about, and rightly so, Dolores Williams, Jacqueline Grant, Katie Cannon, there at Union. But over in Princeton, a few years later, would be Renita Weems, Clarice Martin, who's not a graduate student, she is a professor, and Prathia Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And may I also add, your successor there at Payne Center, Leah Fitchu,
Right.
she was close friends with Prathia, buddies, tight buddies with Prathia. So I'm just saying, my point here is to say, history, as you and I both know, as historians of Bible, history is always told from the point of view of exceptional people,
Yeah.
the lone figure, the
Mm.
person who rose to the top. And not enough of our history tells that while we were emerging, or even after we emerged, we had friends, we had colleagues, we had people who were also in the trenches with us.
Yeah.
Although history may say, "Oh, you are the first, whatever," but I want it to be said, "Yeah, I did finish." But you know what? There was my girlfriend there at Princeton.
Yeah.
Clarice came in, and she was a junior faculty at the time. Kane Hope Felder taught me
Yeah. Came to say.
he was a graduate student at Union. I mean, so most people are like, wow. You're like, yeah, my journey is not as lonely as maybe a previous generation.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely lonely, but it was not as lonely as those who were in the, like this Henry Mitchell's wife, Ella Mitchell. I mean, in the 50s and 40s and 50s at
Yeah.
Union Seminary. I didn't have it that lonely. So
Right.
I came during the heels of the women's movement, and at the heels of the Black Power movement. So there were those who had kind of etched open some doors, had kind of got them just a little bit open. I know that was long, but I just wanted to make sure I say that.
No, that's very important. Very important.
Yeah.
Uh, Keisha, I know that you had some pointed questions you wanted to ask.
Oh yeah, I'm just sucking up all the history because I think it's so fascinating to hear, and I love the point that you make about not being the only one, because I think that that's what, especially for women, sometimes it makes the journey scariest when we think about we're going to be the only one that's in the room. But a lot of times we carry so many people in those rooms with us. So
Mhm,
I'm just curious, like,
mhm.
who did you carry into some of these rooms with you? Because it had to be tough, like as you said, being one of five and not always having your voice and being able to, speak in your full agency. But there had to be some people in you that you kind of conjured up to, give you the courage to continue going forward.
Yeah, great question. Um, again, there are, well, there are several cohort. Oh, no, I think the word that I'm reading. There are several collectives of supporters and people. There are always the kind of historical ancestors. There are the ancestors. There are the
Mm.
Anna Julia Cooper that's in your head. Because I had been such a student of Black women's history and Black women's literature, I came to seminary really wanting to be a novelist. I came to seminary really studying Black women's literature. I came to seminary really having immersed myself in Black women's history. And then this is the 80s and 70s and 80s, and this is where a lot of that literature is beginning to be written anyway. The historical Black women studies, this thing called Black women studies, was emerging in the 80s. All, but some of us are brave. That book was one of the first
Mhm.
Black women studies textbook.
Mhm.
So the history of Black women, the history of Black thinking women, the Black women's literature. I mean, there's just a renaissance of writing. I mean, Dr. Obery knows about this because his wife is a major scholar of this era, and has done a lot of research on this era. And so my point is, so on one level, yes, I've got in my mind, I've read up on Ida Wells Barnett. I know about Mary McLeod Bethune. I know about Anna Julia Cooper. I know about Maria Stewart. I am on speaking terms with their books, and I mean the things that they did, and Polly Murray, etc. So you got the ancestors that I walk into the room with, as Anna Julia Cooper says, when and where I enter, I bring all of those. But then I also had the great fortune of a very supportive community of women that I was a part of as well.
Mhm.
My ordination is Reverend LaKesha is in African Methodist Episcopal Church, but I didn't start off as a minister. I started off, Obery, as a member of the missionary department. Okay, now in the
Really?
Baptist, yes, in the Baptist church, that's the women's auxiliary. Okay, so I was a missionary in the AME church. I wore the little white beanie and the little white dress. Now I'm in my 20s at this point, but I came up under some very progressive pastors' wives who were, Afrocentric. And so Cecilia Williams Bryant
Mhm.
was my pastor's wife when I was in college, and she broke the mold on. This is Jamal Bryant's mother, Reverend Jamal Bryant's mother. But she says I was 18, 19, 20, 21, joined this AME church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And the AME church was pastored by Bishop, well, he was then Reverend John Bryant and his wife. She was not in ministry, but Cecilia Williams Bryant. And they totally broke the mold for me of church, of ministry, of women. So John Bryant, it was a student of the kind of student rights movement, and his wife Cecilia was a brilliant woman as well. And so you're talking about two people who were very Afrocentric, African Methodist Episcopal, neo-charismatic, and I had never seen that combination of Black pastors. Both had huge afros. We were wearing dashikis, singing in the choir, and doing and protesting the drought in the Sahel. And I mean, just it was just so radical. That was
Mhm.
my world. So I
Mhm.
came to ministry seeing fierce Black women in church. I came during a time when Black women were very, very fierce, and changing the roles of just being a pastor's wife, of just being a lay, quote unquote, lay woman, of just being a missionary. All of those kinds of conversations, and those are the women I to this day I still accept speaking engagements to Women's Day, because you know why? Because that's why I cut my teeth.
Mhm.
Those are the women who invited me. It was to the missionaries on a Tuesday night that I did some of my earliest Bible studies that turned into Just a Sister Away.
Yes.
So I would,
Yes.
so all of that was not just sitting down at a desk and writing out those Bible studies. It's like, young lady, you in ministry, and you over there, but come on over here on Saturday
Mhm.
morning and teach us, give us a little Bible study before
Mhm.
our meeting. Yes,
Mhm.
ma'am.
Mhm.
And enough of those came in that you one day you have some Bible studies that can turn into a book. So my point is, yeah, I started off in the missionary department of the AME church, and I was surrounded by some very progressive thinking, Afrocentric, neo-charismatic Black women in the church. I always tease. Now listen, when you invite somebody my age, you're not gonna have a question. You can't get a question in because I got too many stories. I got too much
We
history.
love it.
So
We love it. We love the stories.
so I was in by this time I've gone to move to New York. I'm in revival. I'm in AME worship on Sundays, but I live in New York at this point, but once I graduated from college. And I'm going up to Manhattan and I'm listening to John Henry Clark. I'm listening to Gloria Steinem. I'm listening to Toni Morrison. Listening to June Jordan. So I'm churchy on Sundays. I'm in revival, speaking in tongues. But honey, on Friday and Saturday night, I'm at some poetry reading where there's smoking, cussing, and drinking, and reading radical Black poetry. And the revolution would not be televised.
I
And I
remember
have
them days.
always, I have always lived those two lives.
And that
Yeah,
in-
saved
influence
and radical. Yeah. Go
and
ahead,
that
Obery. What were you saying?
influences your work. Well, that brings us to the topic of the day, and that
Yeah,
is Black women's fight for justice in the church
yeah,
and the
yeah,
body politic.
yeah,
So all of that, those formative things came together, and they have resulted in your womanism now.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so tell us a little about your womanism. I guess let me be more specific. Well, I'll let Keisha pose that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
please do.
No, so I'm just fascinated, especially by the convergence of your secular influences and the sacred influences, because I think, especially as women, we're so often told that we have to choose, right? Like either you're going to be in the world and listening to poetry and the music, or you're going to come to church on Sunday. But I think the fullness of who we are is in our ability to migrate between both spaces. So how would you say that migration impacted your work as a womanist?
Yeah. Well, number one,
And lit
Keisha,
the
I
fire
just,
under you. And how
yeah.
did
Well, that's right.
fire
I
under you?
love the way they talk about and the convergence and the migration back and forth. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I just love your language. I love the new language, microaggressions, and it's like, girl, we just call it racism. They got on my nerves. So I mean,
Well,
I love it, and it's sometimes it takes that kind of question, LaKesha, to help me say, oh yeah, I guess that was migrating back and forth. Yeah, I guess it
Yeah.
was a convergence. You just you just live your life,
Hmm.
and it takes somebody else looking at it and said, do you realize that you were, and I. There's no denying. I'm not one of those who now would say, well, it just sort of happened. No, I will admit I have always, up until recently, I've always been asked to choose. That's no
Hmm.
doubt. Early in my career, I always had to apologize to the church for being a scholar, and I had to apologize to scholarship for being a church woman. And they both are, as I've said, and who's heard me say, both are very jealous lovers. The
Yes.
academy is a jealous lover, and the church is a jealous lover. And I always had to, I was always, I was always asked which one matters the most to me, and I wouldn't choose because I loved both, and both fed a side of me, and to admit that there's no one Renita. There's several Renitas, and there is the Renita who's a scholar who asks the third and the fourth and the fifth question, and who's always peeling back another layer, which drives the church crazy. And
Crazy.
then there is the church side of me that believes in faith in God and mystery and magic, and which drives the academy crazy. So both of those. So I'm both and not either or. And at some point, I don't know, I can't tell you the day, nor the minute, nor the hour when you decide I'm not choosing. But I
Mm.
will say in those early years when you haven't yet developed your sea legs and you haven't yet developed who you are, you apologizing to both groups until one day you stop apologizing. I can't name the day when
yeah.
I realized that that at least, you know, there's some other worlds I can say I also belonged in, but I can say of those two worlds right there, that was, so I had to realize that's my superpower.
Yeah.
That's, I will say this, Reverend LaKesha, it certainly is part of, certainly explains part of it partially explains my longevity.
Right.
But does it
That's the thing
explain
that
your
most people don't ask me that question. How have I managed to do the kind of work that I do and be known as Renita Weems? Because many people come out the gate, but you don't necessarily hear from them again. So how have I been able to do this and do this kind of work for 40 years?
no.
And I think because I do draw on a lot of different wells.
Right.
And I do have a lot of different communities of women and men that I'm constantly in conversation with who feed me.
But I like to
Yeah,
cut to the chase. I thought
yeah.
Reverend Keisha would do it, but I better do. So why are you a womanist? Let's get to the chase. Why are you a womanist? And
Okay,
how
so
and
let me.
what
Okay,
role
let's
has
go. Let's riff. Okay, Obery. Okay, as
okay.
opposed to what? What's the opposite of this? What am I?
I
What are
don't
my
know.
other
You tell me.
alternatives?
You tell me.
No,
You
no, I'm
explain.
telling you, there is no other. That for me, there is no other alternative. I don't know what a. That's like, why are you black? Why are you female?
Okay,
Why
let me
are
put it this
you?
way.
Yeah, put
Let
it
me put it
another
this way.
way.
How black women carry the moral and the spiritual weight of transformation in the society with institutions like the in and out of the church. What is the role, and what role do you see black women playing in the body politic?
Well, okay, now you shifted me now. You're shifting me now. Let's say this. Part of what it means for me to be a woman is it means I am saying that my liberation matters too. That's what it means to be a black woman who's searching for language to describe and talk about not only who she is, but what matters to her, what I want to write about, what I want to talk about, that I want to center Black women's experiences. I want to acknowledge that Black women have been thinking and talking about God for as long as Black men have been thinking and talking about God. I want to talk about that the liberation of Black people is not liberation unless Black women's liberation is included, Black women and girls. Our liberation is included in it. I'm also saying that we recognize that the very institutions that we have upheld are the very institutions that have ignored us, and have exploited our labors, and that in some ways, sometimes in some certain moments, we have been complicit in that. But there have been also those of us who have called that out and challenged that. So we challenge patriarchy, we challenge sexism, we challenge misogyny and misogynoir. That is out there and that is also in here. And we are saying that we live still in a patriarchal society. And there is that, I mean, that's not even up for debate. Maleness, just like we are, my big point is that for us, for Black people to a large degree, racism is a sin. Sexism is naughty,
Mm.
but it is not seen as a sin. It is not seen as worthy of rage or passion in the same way that racism is. I am saying, and we are many of us, a lot of us are saying they are both sins, and they obviously we can talk about intersectionality and all of that. But the point is that I am passionately, unapologetically a womanist, because I believe sexism is as much a sin as racism, and I believe that we live in a solidly patriarchal society.
Yeah.
And as
So
long as
how do
that's
you
the case, yeah, I got to keep going fighting. Yeah.
So how do you contend with the women who uphold patriarchy? Because I know, like, when we think about, this male-dominated society, it's easy for us to place the blame at the feet of men. But if we're
Mhm.
honest, like, the church is predominantly like female members who uphold this notion of, we're not going to elect a woman to be a general officer, and I don't want a woman to be my pastor. Like, how do you speak to those women to help them understand that their own liberation lies in their ability to see other women as capable of leading?
There's a beautiful scene in the movie Harriet Tubman movie.
Yeah.
It's an unforgettable scene, and Harriet comes back to get her sister, and she's already taken one group off, but now she come back for her people. Okay, and she was determined to bring her her mama and daddy, and her sister, and I think another, and of course she's looking for her husband. All of that, right? So she is coming back for her people. And there's a scene where her sister says to her, Harriet, don't judge me. We ain't like you. We not like you. And we decide we're going to stay.
Yeah.
And because we don't want, the risk is too great, blah, 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 mom and dad is, whatever the expect. But my point is what it means to come back and want to free your people. And they don't want to go. They don't want to go. And you've got to free another set of people, but leave yours there. And so I'm saying that is the risk of this work. When I was young, I wanted everybody to be free. I wanted to preach, and I wanted everybody to get it. And then as you get older, you realize that audience begins to shrink. And sometimes the very ones who benefit from it are those who you're really trying to liberate. And I'm not as LaKesha, I'm not as aggrieved by that now as I used to be. That used to worry me before. Now I what is the song we say? If you don't want to go, don't hinder me. So one, and secondly, sometimes you got to free people even if they don't want to be freed. Sometimes I can't. I got to fight this system, whether even if it includes sister. Even if it includes this sister. So because I'm committed to that, and even if she doesn't see it, I see it, and I believe that these things are interlocking. So we we have to find people who share those same passions with us, and say, okay, but we're going to keep knocking on this door anyway, and we're going to keep chiseling away at the powers that be.
Yeah, well, that's yeah. Well, in this moment, I mean, this moment is just full of madness. And with regard to Black women, I mean, for instance, we have a president who clearly hates Black women, and Black women have always caught so much of the brunt of the hatred in this country. What role do you see Black women playing in really confronting this and resisting it and transforming? We see that women have been playing a significant role in voting and mobilizing. But what do you see as a womanist, as a woman who's had such great experience and diverse experiences? What role do you see Black women playing, and how can it be supported by Black men?
Well, let's turn to LaKesha James. Let's turn to something that she said last week. And as she stood there in front of the camera, and I'm in the South. I'm in another part of the world. I know New York politics. Y'all play ball hard up there, and I know that what the rest of us in the rest of the world may see people, and you all have your own opinions about who they really. I don't know nothing about LaKesha James. I mean, beyond what I see, I don't right now. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Okay, I want you New Yorkers to know. But I'm saying my point is, when she stands in that camera and says, that I'm a woman of faith, and when she stands there and say, I am fearless, and I'm not fearful, I am fearless. And when she says, that, like my ancestors have taught me, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Now that is vintage Black women. That is a woman of faith. That is in the faith in the lion's den. And when it was time to get in front of the mic, unlike other women, she went straight to the Bible. She went straight to her faith. She went straight to calling on God. Okay. And so I just said, now, if that is not vintage, that is not us, that no matter how high we may rise in Babylon, when we are facing that fiery furnace, we're like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. So I'm just saying how politics and faith, how Black women bring their social justice, advocacy, and their faith and their historical faith. I don't care if they never go to church. Believe me, there are some battles you're gonna thank God your mama dragged you to Sunday school. You're gonna thank God that you went to church, because you're gonna have to call on something higher than yourself. You're gonna have to call on something that's deeper than yourself. And so I appreciate seeing, she's not the only one, but I just thought that was such a vintage moment. And I have been looking online saying, okay, who has written about that? That's so Black woman, so Black woman. So my point here is so you see this systematic attack, and it's not just her. Is it Lisa Fox? Is that the name? And just Black women who have made up a lot of this government, and who have been a part of, and who have benefited from the U.S. government, who have worked for the government, who has been. So it's a systematic attack, not just a Black and brown women. I want to make that very clear. It's about working class people. It's about middle class people. There are lots that's going on. So you're absolutely right about that. And that Black women we have. I'm not trying to sit here and say that we have done more than Black men. I'm just saying that we have been ignored compared to Black men. I'm not, those of us who are really thinking Christians, thinking women, we're not trying to say who has done it the most. We're just saying, why is it that Black women have consistently get the short shrift in history? Why is it that our contributions as the moral conscious, as moral voice, as contributors to our justice movements, as some of the earliest organizers have been consistent, why our stories are always postscripts, or by the way, oh, well, I didn't know the women did that. I didn't know the women in Montgomery were the ones, even long before Martin King did what he did. I'm just saying that's what we are talking about. We're trying to find that balance. We're trying to restore the contributions, call attention to it, reconstruct those, and say that Black women have been at the forefront as well as Black men.
Yeah.
Well, you published recently
Mhm.
fire article on your Substack. Where have all the prophets gone?
Yeah.
Where have they gone, Dr. Renita? Talk to us about
I think the one comment that I did not make is, have there ever been any prophets? Certainly, have there been any contemporary and modern prophets? I mean, if I can, listen, I'm about my father who finished the 10th grade, didn't go beyond the 10th grade, and had a beautiful mind. I am my father's daughter, really. But my father was a conspiracy theorist, Waffle House, agitator. Okay, you go to Waffle House. Young man, what's your name? Obery? You got that PhD from that school up there, huh? Sit on down here. Let me talk to me about Trump. That's my daddy. Waffle House was his press conference room. Okay. You know the
I
kind of
love
man,
it.
okay,
Yes.
you know the kind of man I'm describing. Hadn't thought about everything, read everything but he had conspiracy theories. So my point is, I have a conspiracy theory. This is mine. And this is my Waffle House conspiracy theory. You can use this one. I think that the taking down of Jeremiah Wright
Mm,
I was as deliberate. This is not about Jeremiah Wright,
right.
although I know Jeremiah Wright and love him. This is not, but I see that the moment that happened, I think there's been what we have discovered over the last that for the last 40, 50, and 60 years, there has been a conspiracy. There has been a concerted decision about systematically dismantling democracy, the rise of neo-fascism and white nationalism, and it didn't just sprout up. And what we have seen, that now that we look back, we're like, oh, that decision, oh, when they did this, oh, when they elected this one, oh God, and we weren't, some of us, not all of us, some of us weren't paying attention and didn't have the larger picture. I do believe that that with Jeremiah Wright, something happened in terms of discrediting Black preachers, to the extent we're talking about prophets and talking about Black people. And obviously, Black preachers are not the only ones who have been prophetic by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm just talking about within the last 20 years or so in our life, your and my and LaKesha's lifetime. The Waffle House prognosticator in me says, now that I think about it, this was never about a Jeremiah Wright.
Right.
We haven't heard from Black preachers in the same way since then. Clearly, Black preachers have been preaching. They have been out on the streets. I'm not saying they're not, but something collapsed. Something collapsed in the moral imagination of this country, and that is that up to that time, Black preachers have always been a part of the moral conscience of this country. They've always been a spokesperson. There's always been somebody that the media ran to ask, what do Black people think? They they don't even bother to interview us anymore. We're not on. I mean, and not in the same way. I know. I said this is Waffle House, which means I make grand generalizations. But my point here is, as I look back over, I say to myself, something happened back then that wasn't just about Jeremiah Wright. It was really about part of us. Our getting to this moment also required, in addition to a lot of other things we have watched, it has required that there had to be an attack against the Black church. It had to be a silencing of the Black. It had to be a defanging of the Black church and the Black moral voice of preachers. Someone may say it was before then. I'll say, okay, it's before then. But I'm saying that's a part of the 2025 playbook as well. That's my point.
Yeah.
You
Now,
know,
I want to ask you though. Jeremiah Wright was an outlier, of course, and they were.
And so was Martin Luther King. Your prophets usually
I'm
are.
saying that. So they were always. It's not like what they did has silenced the Black prophets in the church. Like you said, were there ever any prophets? I mean, we had voices here and there, but so where have all the prophets going? Yeah, I'm wondering when did we see a concerted Black prophetic preaching tradition in the church? Remember Martin Luther King? We saw how the National Baptist Convention treated Martin Luther King, and I recall that when he was trying to get folk to support the Poor People's Campaign, he called a meeting in Virginia, invited 103 ministers, and not one showed up. So, should we be saying that they've silenced the prophetic voice, or should it be a critique that there has not really been, and there certainly is not a pronounced prophetic tradition now with the rise of pulpit entertainers and everything?
But you're right. And also I would say, no, there are. Well, I think one of the things I said in the essay is, if I didn't say it, I meant to say it. We assume that prophets, everybody recognizes them at the time that they are being prophetic, and we assume that they claim a national stage. Now, these texts we have, we think that Jeremiah was well known. We think that Isaiah was well known. We think that Ezekiel commanded the attention of whoever. So I'm saying that to say, I do believe that there are prophets. They may not be on the national stage. They may not be the most popular and well known. I obviously certainly said in the essay there on Substack that they are not always just preachers.
Right.
I believe that musicians prophetic. In the Bible, when Nebuchadnezzar came in and destroyed the southern kingdom, he took all the artists with him, along with the military people, because he knew artists can foment a revolution
That's true.
before preachers can. If you get the right music, I was just listening the other day to Heaven. This is older than LaKesha won't know anything about Teddy Pendergrass and
I
Harold Melvin
absolutely
and the rest.
do.
But wake up, everybody! Time to
Yes.
teach a new day. If that's not a prophetic song, I don't know what is. I just listen to it sometimes and say, "My God, this song came out in the '80s and '75." My God, and wake up all the preachers, wake up all the teachers. And I'm
Mhm.
saying that song right there is just, it really energizes me. So I'm just saying that I believe that there are Marvin McMichael, who wrote a very defining book, Where Have All the Prophets Gone? He says he spoke to a class of mine last year in Austin, and he said every sermon cannot be prophetic, not if you're a pastor. He says some sermons are pastoral,
Right.
some sermons are priestly, some sermons are prophetic, some
Hmm.
sermons are, and he said, in the span of a lifetime as a pastor, he said, I wasn't railing every Sunday. I wasn't quote unquote being a prophet every Sunday. Sometimes I had to be priestly. Sometimes I had to be pastoral. So my point is, are we talking about the John the Baptist kind of prophet who lives out on eats berries and birds, and they live on the edge of society, and they all matted and smelling and ugly looking? Is that the prophet? Where that's a kind of prophet? Are we talking about mainstream guys in nice suits and white beater shirts and big churches? Okay, that may be another kind of image of us. And it may be people who you never ever that are never known. So I'm not as inclined. This is the part of me that's the church girl over, and that is I I just don't believe there are none. I maybe
Oh
I
no,
don't
that's not
know
the
them.
point. The question
Yeah.
is the tradition. The question is
Yeah.
is is,
Oh yeah.
is,
I mean, are we
is
saying that? I mean, of course, I believe that we do believe that King was. I do believe King was a prophet. Martin Luther King was a prophet. I do
yes,
believe.
of course.
Yeah. I mean, and long before him, there's Henry
Right,
Harlan
right,
Garnett and all of those.
right.
So I certainly there have been prophetic voices who all suffered during their lifetime, who were all uh, uh, marginalized in their and all lost engagements, lost friends in their lifetime. By all means,
But we are
absolutely,
hurting now
we
for
are
lack
hurting now.
of prophetic speaking up, standing up, and speaking truth to power. That's so. When your article, your
Yeah,
Substack article, everybody should read. I think, where have all the
thank you.
prophets gone? I mean, the question is, what is a prophet, and is there a tradition in the church, and if not, why not? And what do we do to to start one, or to jumpstart?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, you and I. You now wait a minute. You and I are and have been, and it would be a criticism of us as seminary professors who taught them, who made them read King and Brueggemann and Howard Thurman and made them read all these, and you and I, well, then maybe the fault lies with us. If we're saying that you and I represent 30, 40 years of being particularly seminary professors, and I believe that all prophets got to come out of seminary. But if you and I are saying we spent all these years teaching the kind of radical things that we try to teach with liberation theology, womanist theology, post-colonial, you name it. And what are we saying? As I'm about to go to my dad's language, nan one of them dudes. We didn't
No,
produce one prophet.
no, we're
We
not
didn't.
saying that at all.
Okay,
And they
I
go,
know you want to back up and not say that. We can't say
Well,
that because
I'm
that would
they
be.
forget, but they forget. They go to class.
Yeah, I
But
mean, listen.
if you don't like Renita, I mean, I'm going to let Keisha jump right in, but I just want to say this. When you talk where all the prophets going, I think it really bears critiquing the church, the black church, because
Yeah.
black folks are the one catching the brunt, about
Yeah.
the real lack of, I mean, in general terms, of a tradition now, at least contemporary, of standing up and speaking truth to power. Look at our denomination, African Methodism. When all that Trump is doing now, what are we hearing? What are we hearing from the National Baptists? That's all I'm saying when I talk about the
Yeah.
prophetic
Yeah.
tradition. But I'm going to let my sister
Well,
close.
I love your Waffle House conspiracy, and the thing that stood out to me when you were speaking is not necessarily that there aren't prophetic voices, but how are people like the Barack Obamas aligning themselves with those voices so that they have a platform. Because to the point of us having pulpit entertainers, they're the ones who typically get the platform. So are we aligning ourselves with those voices who are willing to speak truth to power and giving them the stage? Or is it us that are making these voices not as well known because it's easier to call in the pastor who's going to hoop it up for you versus the one who's going to cause your congregation to go out and march on the courthouse steps?
Right. Yeah.
Celebrity
Let's see.
pastor, celebrity preachers.
Yeah. And there have, I'm sure there have always been celebrities
Yeah, sure have.
that there have always been celebrities. So that, it gets amplified in this era of social media and
Right.
technology and the digital world. They seem to come out of the woodwork. Let me back up with just one more caveat here: is it possible to be prophetic in a capitalist society? That's the question I kept. As you were pushing, both of you, I said, now we do have to admit that we live in a society that is capitalist,
Right.
and with resources that reward some people and not others, and that
Right.
we are all scraping to make a living. And we are talking about preachers, we're talking about people who do not have generational wealth. And for many, ministry has been the gateway to middle classness for centuries, for decades in black culture. Ministry was the gateway to middle classness. I mean, this is the sociologist, anthropologist, and me trying to step back before I talk about the celebrity preachers. And because if you go over to parts of West Africa, it just breaks your heart to see
Oh
how
yeah.
capitalism and celebrity and was it for-profit preachers? What do you call them?
The
Preachers fall
prosperity.
into them. Prosperity, right? The prosperity preaching. You're just brokenhearted at how that has been exported to various
Yeah.
parts of the world.
Yeah.
It's just painful. So my point is here is that yes, I've got to focus. Let me just say this. On one level, you expose that part of what a prophet does is expose the sham. You expose the lie. You expose, like I always use this image of Toto at the end of Wizard of Oz, the little dog that jumps out of her arms and runs over and pulls the curtain back. And there is this man, and he says, pay no attention to the man behind the camera. But it took that little dog jumping out of her lap and going. My point is, part of what a prophet does, it pulls back that curtain and says, here is who has been manipulating us. Here is who has been making us afraid. Here who has been telling us lies. Okay, that is part of what a prophet does, hands down. And then the prophet also, when when America has been destroyed, when the empire crashes, when we are all unemployed, when we're all frightened, this is not the time for the prophet to denounce. It's now time for the prophet to preach hope. So in the time of false confidence, you denounce. But in the time of trauma and shame and or shock and pain, now the prophet must help people imagine a future that they had never imagined before. And those are the dual, I believe with Eshel and Brueggemann and others, those are the
That's
dual roles. We
right.
know about denouncing. What I really think that we have not done as well, Obery and LaKesha? I think that we have we've got the people who do a lot of denouncing, myself
Right.
included. We call it in seminary, LaKesha, deconstructing. We can deconstruct.
Yes.
We have not taught you how to reconstruct. We have
Right.
not taught you to use Obery's testament. I, John, was on the Isle of Patmos, and I saw a new heaven and a
That's right.
new earth. We have not described for them
No,
a
no, a
new
new
heaven
vision. We
and a
talk about
new
the people.
vision.
We say
Yeah.
the
We
without vision the people perish, but we don't give them a vision.
we
Now,
have
Project
no
2025 is a vision, it's an evil vision, but
yeah.
we haven't. We talk about the kingdom of God. Well, what on earth? So what's that going to look like? We have not articulated a real
Yes,
vision. What
and
we should
which
be
is
fighting.
which is why King's speech, "I have a dream," still resounds. Whatever you may
Right.
think about it, but the reason why it still gives you goosebumps is that who has ever been able, there have been, to match when my children and we will not be judged by the content, by the color of their skin, but by the content. I have a dream, blah blah blah. I mean, that is what you're talking about, the ability. And I know maybe one other preacher who could bring me to my feet was the late Reverend Dr. Gardner Taylor, who was able to kind of, his use of poetry, his use of imagining and visioning and that is probably, we have taught you the skills of deconstruction, but we have not taught the skills of learning how to help people imagine what this whole new world after this destruction might
Yeah,
look like. What is justice?
that's
What
right.
is
Exactly.
equality? What
Exactly.
is the beloved community?
That's
That's what
right.
we're talking about.
That's right. What is it? And that's prophetic imagination you mentioned,
Yes,
Brueggemann's phrase.
hands
Yes,
down.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Very good. Good point.
And I think that's so important. And what do you imagine women's role will be in reconstructing? Because one of my theories is, as Black
Mhm.
people, we've always talked about how the system wasn't designed for us and this country wasn't built for us. But to your point, as it's being deconstructed, there's going to be an opportunity for us to build something new. What role do you think Black women especially are going to have in that rebuilding of society that it's inevitable that it will happen as we're destroying all the agencies and bureaucracies that have been holding us back?
Well, that's an excellent question, and let me come at it with one particular way of responding is, always, whatever way that we imagine, it still is, LaKesha, I think, it still is going to be rooted in something of what we have experienced.
Mhm.
Can we imagine anything that we have never imagined before? Can we imagine anything that we have never lived before? That even when we deconstruct religion, what we're going to build new is still going to have some religious elements to it,
Right,
because
right.
that's our tradition. That is our language. So on one level, we must critique the Black church, but on another level, we're trying to bring the best of the Black church forward in this
Right.
this thing we're trying to imagine. I hope that part of what it means um, to broaden the table, to bring Black women to the table, Black and brown people to the table. Because when you bring Black and brown people, I want to believe that you bring poor people, you bring people who have been invisible, you bring trans people, you bring people from other traditions, you bring the disabled. I, I don't know what that's going to look like. I just know that everybody's got to get around this table. And we're going to and we're going, there's an expression, and you're just making me kind of riff in here, but that every revolutionary, the day after the revolution, the revolutionary becomes a dictator.
Mm.
That it's something about power,
Power.
LaKesha. It's
Yes.
something about power that once you get it, you're like, no, you can't sit here. No, we're not gonna let you in. And you just fought for everybody to get around the table,
Yeah,
for this new world to be built. And isn't that what these dystopic movies that we are watching? That
yeah,
once the ones who were trying to survive, the powerless, get in place, they lose their don't worry about it. They lose their mind. And they
Mm.
become like the very people that they just put out. So my
Exactly.
point is my greatest fear is unless we have prophets around the table, unless we have people we listen to, we're going to save this new world that we're going to build, and you get in power. So are we trying to replace patriarchy with matriarchy? We're
Mm,
trying to
Right.
replace it with something totally different and new. And
mm,
and that's the you know how many people who are now 60s and 70s, 80s, who were once part of the ones who were fighting against the Vietnam War, were
yeah.
fighting for women's rights. In their 20s and 30s, many of these same people were radicals. And then they turned a certain age, and now all of a sudden they're trying to shut the door on the very people that they were trying to open door when they were younger. It's something about
Right.
aging, it's something about capitalism, it's something about power, all of these things, which is why, can I just conclude this part by saying, that's why I always argue those who are around the table cannot just be preachers. You got to have sociologists around the table. You got
That's
to
right.
have economists around
That's
the
right.
table. You got to
That's right.
have therapists around the table, because sometimes we as ministers, preachers in the theology field think that we have all the answers. I
That's
just,
right.
I just know religion.
That's
That's
right.
all I know. I know God and religion and Bible and preaching, but I need to be in conversation with politicians, folks who got a degree in politics to help me. Let me remind me the history of politics in America, the
Mhm.
economy. Tell me again what
Right.
capitalism would do to a
Right.
country.
That's
Blah,
right.
blah. We got to bring on the table to include not just those of us who are
That's
accustomed to pontificating as preachers. We've got to bring the better mind around the table.
exactly. We
Can
need
you
a
say that to the church leaders too, that they need to bring in some
Yes,
some
absolutely.
other,
You're
because it's
absolutely
not just
correct.
in the world, right? Like it's in the church as well, that we need to have more diverse people as we're attempting to minister in this
Yeah.
world. But Dr.
And they
Hendricks,
got
please.
them, in their churches. Some of them got them right there in their
they don't
congregation.
call them
Bright,
Right.
smart
call
people.
on
Yeah,
them. They don't call on them. And that's why, churches
that's right.
like J. Alfred Smith, who just
Yeah,
passed. First
Mhm.
time
yeah,
I spoke at his church, it came time for announcements, and sister came up. I expected to hear about fish fries and all that, and she started reading, uh, talking about the policies, local, state, and federal policies people need to be aware of, and to raise their consciousness. So that's
yeah,
something that can happen.
yeah.
Well, let me share this one. I asked Angela Davis once. We were talking about prison abolition. That's what Angela.
Mhm.
That's I remember Richard Pryor said. He said when he went to prison, he saw how fast them brothers was. He said, I'm sort of glad they have prisons, right? But I said, well,
Yeah,
if we get rid of prison, um, what are we going to replace with? She said, well, are prisons destructive? Do they just, are they inhumane? Blah, blah. I said, yes. She said, well, we have to fight the humanity. She said, I don't know what's going to come next, but we know
mm,
that we
mm.
can't stay here. So you're so absolutely right. We have to evolve a vision, and it has to be
Yeah,
holistic, as you
yeah,
described it. It has to be about
yeah,
political economy, all on
yeah,
all of those things. So I appreciate you pointing that out. That's so important. If the churches would have social action committees or social
hmm
um,
hmm
social consciousness raising committees and
yeah,
all that, churches could actually be relevant, because let's face it,
yeah,
if we were really relevant these days,
yeah.
Trump and the white Christian nationalists would have never gotten as far as they've gotten. And they're
Right.
still winning, and we're still letting them win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This
No,
has been
no, but are we gonna? We're not gonna end on that note. Are we? We're not ending on
no,
defeats. We're
No,
not
no, no.
ending.
no,
We're not
oh
ending on
no.
defeatists
Yeah.
because, and I will tell you that
But
is
that's the
why.
defeat. That's not where we
No,
end.
yeah, I got you. I got you.
Okay.
You know what? I would tell you this is one of the reasons I listen to this podcast. I listen to Stacey Abrams' podcast. I listen to Noah Trevor's podcast. I listen to I forgot a couple of others that I'm thinking about. I can't think of the White Sisters podcast that's on the Supreme Court, where she only talks about the Supreme Court. And I can't. It's a Latin word that she uses. Okay, but my point is, one of the reasons why I certainly always listen to Stacey Abrams' podcast, because Sister Girl is not going to close without telling you the
No.
10 things we ought to be doing. Okay.
Yes.
And the 5 things that people are doing over here. That's why I listen to Rachel Maddow. I know people may say whatever they want, but Rachel's going to tell you the history of what happened. And this is how they defeated it in 1940. This is how they defeat. And because they're trying to say, we have been here before.
Right.
And they have attempted to do this before. So whatever else you may think about some of these people who are long-winded and they're so heady and they do all of this other stuff, Stacey Abrams is going to leave you with some concrete things that you can do. Rachel Maddow is going to try to give you some idea on her podcast and her other thing that we have been here before. This is what they are doing. But in 1940, when so-and-so rose up to do the very same thing. So my point is, and when they tell me that there are principals who won't let ICE in and to take these babies out of those schools,
Yeah.
there is God. There is God. When they tell me that ICE came into a neighborhood in those early days and people were pouring glitter on top of them so that you could know who they were, there is God. Listen, baby, I'm looking for hope wherever I can find it. Okay.
Yeah.
I hear tell there are people now when they see ICE coming into the neighborhood, they're getting in their cars and they're hitting the horn and they got megaphones saying, here they come, here they come. Listen, they may not be on the pulpit and they may not be with a megaphone, but people are protesting
Oh,
at the
that's
level
resistance.
at which they can. When I saw, I'm the Reverend Dr. Renita Weems, but when I got this video yesterday of this sister who cussed ICE
I
from
saw.
one, I said,
I said.
Holy Ghost,
Yeah.
and won't God do it? I mean, she went
From A to Z.
in. A to Z. I mean, Sister Girl went in. And I said, girl, do your thing. Right? Yeah, do your thing. So my point is, I'm always looking for acts of resistance.
And
And
I agree.
people are always doing little things that we don't know anything about. And I will say this. Every day, LaKesha and Obery, that we walk out our doors as Black men and Black women, you better have in your mind what you gonna do.
That's true.
You
That's
have better every day you're gonna have to decide where's my mind in the sand.
Yeah.
If they if I encounter this, if I see somebody being treated, we are living in a moment where you're gonna have to decide every day who I'm
Yes.
going to be today when I walk out this door.
right.
I don't know who gonna come at me. Some redneck is gonna come at me. Some
Mm-hmm.
fascist is gonna come at me in the grocery store, in the
Mm,
airline,
never know.
at the bank, in my
Mm-hmm.
car. You had better make some intelligent decisions now about what you're gonna do, because if they come
That's
for
right.
them at night, they come for you
That part.
in the
Yep.
morning.
And you gotta keep hope alive. I want to make two quick things. Johnny Youngblood, I will always love Johnny Youngblood because when Johnny Youngblood did communion, he didn't go through no long, oh, his precious blood is that. Johnny would lift up the elements and say, to Jesus. And
Yeah,
that's empowering, that gives
yeah,
hope, and that's what
yeah,
we have to lift up the radicality of the gospel, because that's the only
yes,
thing that gives us hope. And evil holds within it its own seeds of destruction. We have to remember
yeah,
that
yeah.
and never give up.
Yes, and never,
Awesome.
ever, ever give up. Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for spending this evening with us. It was as wonderful as we both imagined it would be when
One
we
and
thought to
only Dr.
invite you.
Renita J.
Yes.
Weems.
Yes. So please share with our listeners and viewers, where can we find out more about you? Where can they read about where have the prophets gone? Where are you online?
I am on Stack. Jump back on. I jump back on. I'm one of the early. I'm told that I'm an early adapter. I love that term.
Yes.
People talk about me about a black PD, but you know what? I love the term. What one of my students called me the other week. Dr. Weems has always been an early adapter. She was on email before all of us. She was on this. So many years ago, I had a blog called Thing Within, and it was very popular. And I miss blog. I mean, I miss the personal say form. I miss those kind of opinion pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this summer, I think I started back, and I have a Substack, and you can find it under my name, Renita Weems, and that's pretty much where I do most of my hell raising, if you will. That's where I speak my mind, where I pull a switch out and whoop the children in the yard, and that's also where I sit on the porch and with my tobacco and snuff and rock and say, now children, you gotta get yourself together. So that's where I love that. I can't do it all the time, but Substack is probably the most consistent I am on.
Yeah.
Old people Facebook. I do old people Facebook. So yeah, I know ain't nobody on Facebook but old people. My daughter lets me know that. And I am Instagram and LinkedIn and all those, but where I opine is there on Substack.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Awesome.
I am currently serving as the academic dean at Gammon Theological Seminary in Atlanta. So I'm
That's
doing
right.
it on the
Sorry.
side. That's my side gig, LaKesha. That's my side gig. I'm not when I'm not writing or speaking, doing other things. I care about Black theological education.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Dr.
Thank you.
Obery, where can we find you online?
Well, I'm doing like my sister. I'm trying to whip behind as much as I can on Substack and
Doing a
Obery
great job.
Jr.substack.com. Yes, thank you, Dr. Weems. Yeah, I
Mhm,
think we
mhm.
are. We have a mutual appreciation society because I
Yeah.
love your
Mhm.
stuff. Yeah, I think what we have in common is that we both are concerned with trying to deconstruct so we can
Yeah.
reconstruct. And if
Yeah.
we have to put a little hiney in the meantime, well, we
Mhm,
willing to do
mhm,
that.
mhm,
And
mhm.
Reverend LaKesha, listen to this, Dr. Weems. Where can we find you, Reverend
Yeah.
LaKesha?
You know, LaKesha, I was thinking that very same thing. I was wondering
Where
She's
can they
on
find
where.
me? You can
she's
find
on
me
all
on all
media.
social media at
Oh
LaKesha
Lord.
Womack.
All media.
All social media. Unfortunately, I don't have
Ha-
time to write as much anymore as you all do.
on that little thing called ticky tacky thing, that little ticky
The
thing too.
little ticky tacky, I'm on the little X thingy and the Instagrammy and all all the things. I don't get to post as much, but I definitely check in. And I actually stayed on
Okay, good.
X because I
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
algorithm for some reason shows me a lot of the opposing opinions. And sometimes when we're in
Oh,
our bubble and we hear our perspectives, we tend to believe one thing. And I go in there and I'm like, oh man, like that is not at all what
I
this
can't stand to
country.
listen to that no more.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
but but
Yeah.
but you have to know like how
Yeah,
they're
no, I
processing
read the Wall Street
information because
Journal and I
yeah,
see all
Yeah.
that. No, I follow, but I just X. I had to get off X. I couldn't
nah,
stand it.
it's a whole different world over there. That's all I'm gonna
It's
say
a
about it. It's
whole different world.
That's true.
but
Whole
yes,
different world.
but thank you all so much for tuning in this evening. Please join us next week. We have Reverend William Lamar the Fourth talking about how they defeated the Proud Boys and strategies for countering extremism against our communities. And that is going to be a
Yeah.
very interesting show because they did something really, really
Yeah.
interesting against the Proud Boys, and we can't wait to dive in and hear more about that. So
Because we don't
thank you
even
all.
hear about the Proud Boys anymore.
We don't because they're making all the money from it. So
The brothers whipped him up. Lamar and them got him. Well,
yes,
thank you
that's how
so
we use
much.
capitalism to our advantage. So
Very
Yeah.
good. Good point. Good
yes,
point.
yes, yes.
All right.
All
Thank you.
right. Good night, everyone.
Well,